Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, host of Operation GCD, not the vice president. Unfortunately, my co host, Nick, host of the Occult Rejects, could not make it here this evening. Sadly, he's been shanghaied off to China, but thankfully, I got his one of his captors on deck here to co host, Jin the Ninja. Jen, how you doing, sir? Fellow Occult Reject.
Hi, JJ. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to be your trusty sidekick. Usually I'm just Nick's trusty sidekick, or at least the one he relies on to ask really metaphysical, really weird questions.
No, for sure. I appreciate you joining us in Nick's absence. He'll be back next week. He didn't really get shanghaied, obviously, but you're fitting the mold for the perfect conversation tonight here, Jen, to fill in because we got ourselves a guest of Rye, the host of Codega's Codex of Curiosities. Rye, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back. Living it up.
Yeah, Jen and you were just meeting for the first time tonight, albeit Jen's a fellow Occult Reject like myself here. And the Occult Rejects, you joined us for a conversation a few weeks back on a drug trafficking.
Fine young lady.
Very fine young lady. Magdalena Solis, the witchcraft high priestess of a drug trafficking cult, satanic cult in Mexico.
Blood drinking, heart eating,
vampire
orgy starting. Yes, a little bit of everything. Yeah, that was a fantastic episode. I was introduced to Magdalena Solis by Blaze Stark. He wrote actually a comic about it all, which was great. And and here we are.
Nice. And now that was a great conversation. I highly recommend folks go check that out. In fact, as I was mentioning to you before the show, it spun off two subsequent conversations where we were comparing that cult to the Adolfo Costanza satanic cult situation. We can get more into those details tonight, but because that situation is far more wild than I initially realized until I looked further into it and kind of compared these cults and activities and time frames. But yeah, that's super interesting. But apparently, you don't cover a lot of cult stuff on your podcast. There, the Codega's Codex of Curiosities.
Yeah, it's a mouthful of alliteration. Yeah, I know when Nick checked out my show, he's like, "Oh, look it, he does cults," and he saw the Magdalena Solis, and then he also saw like he was assuming it was like mass murderers kind of thing because he saw my Jack the Ripper one as well.
Okay,
and those are my only two episodes that are in that kind of field. So everything else I do is just a potluck of cryptids and paranormal, supernatural, lost history, everything else conspiracy. Yeah. So it'll satisfy all appetites is kind of what I do.
Nice. So what are your favorite? I mean, I actually have a couple things teed up on and around those topics here to discuss tonight. That is the matters of ancient history and high weirdness. For example, the high weirdness that goes on in and around the Mound sites. And that's why I figured Jin would have some interesting details in his expertise of high weirdness and metaphysical natures. So it's always been weird to me the things that occur in and around these Mound sites, these ancient architecture here that sits. They got mounds all across the world, but obviously a lot here in America where the ones I've trekked are to see the very high weirdness that surrounds them. But these are sites of ancient history, so it's kind of the epicenter of those subjects, right?
Exactly. And you know what's kind of strange is that these mound sites, like a good friend of mine, he's like, we call them mounds, but let's be honest, at one time they were pyramids, and that's what he believes. Not all of them, of course. Have Serpent Mound, which,
sure.
Yeah, Serpent Mound, of course, it's not a pyramid. That's a definite snake. And a lot of them fall on the 33rd parallel too. There is that time with the 33rd parallel in the mounds as well. Unfortunately, I've never visited any of these mound sites. I'm not from the U.S. I would have loved to, but maybe you said Jin is a little versed in them.
He's well versed in the metaphysical aspects of the universe here. So, I mean, these mound sites in my opinion, represent these metaphysical portals, if you will. Maybe not a physical portal necessarily, but could be. You never really know, I suppose.
Well, if you're looking at this one, this looks identical to the pyramids of the sun and the moon in Teotihuacan in central Mexico. So again, when I was saying when my friend Brad was saying, they're pyramids, this looks identical to it. Maybe a little bit smaller, maybe closer to the size of the Pyramid of the Moon, not the Pyramid of the Sun. The Pyramid of the Sun is huge. But
well, don't let the picture fool you. That's bigger than the Great Pyramid as far as the footprint it sits in, right?
And I think the Pyramid of the Sun is as well. It's much grander, but it's like wider. Like the footprint is bigger, but the height is not there.
So this is Cahokia, Illinois. This is Monk's Mound, Cahokia, Illinois mound, site. Now the Mississippi Valley mound sites in the later periods of these mounds. This one I think was this city was more populated in the 12th century than London, England was. Just for example, that's supposedly how the story goes. So, but these later mound sites and during that period were all seemed to, especially the Mississippi Valley down towards Florida, that even down to the southeast down there, it seems to have really incorporated, like you're saying, these Mesoamerican maybe architectural principles, right? So these temples look very similar, pyramid fashion.
Definitely, there is some definite tie-in, and the question is, where did all these people go? Where did they go? What was the purpose of these mounds? And we could jump into and that'll take us too far away though. But I was thinking the underground sonar or the underground satellite images of the pyramid of in Giza, not the lesser of the two. I forget which one that one was called there again, but like which one was that one here? That was the recent discovery, finding that it's beneath the second largest pyramid, not Pyramid of Giza, where they found the cylinder, like the cylinders type of shafts going down with a circular going down.
I'm familiar with those claims.
Yeah. So I've often wondered, and this is a thing that I've stated before, not necessarily on to this grandeur, but I said what you see above on these huge megalithic sites is fantastic. But think about the types of buildings we're building now. When we build a huge skyrise, what do we do at the base? We have to engineer like these footings. We have to create this base so that it won't sink, right? We're not going to lose it. So they're putting tons and tons and tons and tons of material on here. What are they doing to make sure that it's not depressing and falling down? There has to be some sort of substructure below it. And then when they talked about these shafts going down, it was something that brought to my mind. I was like, well, this kind of ties in with my theory that you need good engineering so that these things don't fall down or not fall down, but start to submerge and sink. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, they do seem to defy what we know about architectural engineering as far as the weight of those structures and whatnot, as far as supporting all that stuff.
Yeah.
At one point in time, that stuff was a lot of that stuff was buried. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yes, I wasn't sure about the pyramids, but I knew the Sphinx was buried and they had to unearth that. But if the Sphinx is buried, it's pretty close to the pyramids, so it's
right.
Crazy. So there's that much more. Mm-hmm.
No, I just think and you bring up some good points about some of these ancient cultures, right? So those ancient cultures, I don't think are all that disconnected from the ancient cultures here in North America, right? We focus a lot on these Egyptian stuff. Well, there's all this right
in your back door, mm-hmm.
Right? And there's all this hubbub right now about what's underneath the pyramids over there. And Miss Potts here is asking what's inside these mounds. No one's asking those questions.
Well,
what's inside those mounds has largely been this. Go ahead, Jen.
I apologize, JJ, for interrupting. No, you're fine. But I see Nick and Ashley are in the audience, so I'll go a little weird for them, but not too weird.
Awesome.
Obviously, this isn't my show, so.
Get as weird as you need to be there, Jen.
Well, so I like the idea that there is Quicksilver under, like there is obviously the archaeological idea that the Quicksilver is under the temples, but I'm going to say, like in Cabala, I know this is like becoming something I'm not famous for, but maybe like my Twitter internet micro celebrity status is, I'm well known for this. So I'll say in Cabala, the idea of Quicksilver can also be likened to what Nick often calls like ride the lightning or ride the dragon. That can also be an expression of that same alchemical and metaphysical principle. So when we're talking about like these shafts and like even I know you know a lot about this, JJ, like the astrotheological placement of the mounds is paramount. And I don't even know
For sure.
if our modern astronomy / astrology is even capable of sort of understanding the intricacies of like what they're intending to signify in an astrotheological way, in terms of what's the story of the planets, what stars are they worshiping, what planets are they worshiping, what are they doing. So my point about the quicksilver is that that is the malleable sort of essence of the universe, in pretty much in many cosmologies, at least we'll say. And so it's this kind of, it's the Hermetic principle, right? Because that is what the expression of Hod is. There's no greater expression of Hod than Hermes. Now, in the Greek systems, he gets amalgamated into one character, as I've argued on Rejects many times, not with Nick, but just as a general idea that I carry with me whenever I go on other shows, is that there are three expressions of Mercury. And so, but I don't, it's neither here nor there really, but so he gets amalgamated into one, Hermes. But there are distinctions that you have to make in his character. Like I know when you talk about Society of Cincinnatus, JJ, that you sometimes have to talk about the caduceus, and then you have to talk about this other staff. But both of them are Hermetic. They're just different degrees of the same ideas. Like the merchant and the prince, those are both Hermes, but those are very different kinds of archetypes, right? So anyway, so my point is that lightning can signify all of these things, like lightning of the mind, like the lightning path of Cabala, like the lightning strike that you receive in your Merkaba, your sort of black cube skull cup matrix, your brain, your mind. So that's one idea. And obviously when we talk about Mormons, they're very focused on this kind of Merkaba, black cube or crystal cube. Not everybody thinks of it as a black cube, right? Like some, the higher principles think of it in a higher form, higher kind of consciousness, like a diamond or a crystal. So, but anyways, it's a palace architecture. So you could say that this is kind of like the inverse. This is kind of like the vehicle architecture, because as you said, JJ, it was previously buried, but it's showing us a positive form. The mountain is rising upwards in the sky. So in a metaphysical way, we would say that the priest or the magi, maybe as I like to call them, they would stand on top of the pyramid and project out their consciousness. So the lightning strike would be coming upwards. So this is not Merkaba architecture. This is actually Hekalot architecture, which means vehicle. So this is like a common theme we see in when you guys do Parapolitics shows. There seems to be a disagreement, like a very fundamental disagreement, and this also occurs with the Mormons, also occurs with Joseph Smith.
Sure.
There seems to be a disagreement in the preference of the red pillar or the blue pillar, Mars or Jupiter, Deborah or Chesed. So I just think that there's a way to sort of understand what they're talking about through this. Like you can use Cabala to understand this sort of ancient system that we don't really know about. And I think that a lot of the, we'll call them modern American magicians, are drawing also from this kind of like architecture. And if you look at the kind of history of archaeology in the Americas, it is also funded by all the same families that JJ always talks about.
Yep.
So
Society Cincinnati families, right?
That's right. And so I think that that is what is happening, is that they're using a kind of more universalist system to understand what is going on there. Now, is that going to result in a perfect understanding? No. But it's going to, you're going to glean some information of what was really going on. So I know a lot of people talk about secret history. I think the secret history is just that metaphysics is like a true science that is practiced at like all levels of society.
Sure.
Some people know, some people don't know. And once you do start to see it, once you do start to understand, or maybe even have magical experiences, then it kind of transforms your relationship with these kinds of narratives if there is real Mercury, or maybe it's conceptual Mercury, maybe it's lightning in the sky or lightning descending down. Anyways, just some thoughts.
No, that's some good thoughts, Jen. I appreciate you sharing that. And I did you a disservice in your introduction, because not only are you an occult reject, you're also the host of the Threshold Saints, where you discuss a lot of these metaphysical ideas of the world, right?
Thank you so much, JJ, for saying that. And you didn't forget at all. I don't plug myself when obviously I came on as your like junior co-host, so I didn't need to plug myself today. But
right,
I do host Threshold Saints. We talk about meta fiction, meta magic, and meta reality. It's pretty much.
No, for sure. I appreciate your understanding of these
mind-blowing,
sites,
man. That was an amazing breakdown that you gave us too. You know, I'm really interested. I've never heard, actually, strangely enough, I never heard about Quicksilver being in the pyramids, like at the base of the pyramids. Which Mercury is kind of like the go-to between both worlds, right? I think that's what it was attributed as well, like the person who can take you from one world to the other, if I am correct in assuming that.
Yes.
So like into the underworld, and
I'm not your guy for that one. That's Jen.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to be careful. Todd's in the comments.
So is that what the Mercury would be then, representing underneath these pyramids is the entrance to the underworld? Because they're obviously, that was a big thing for the ancient Egyptian culture, right? This understanding of the underworld.
It can be, it's like the lightning path. So it's like it can be, you could say, like, what is lightning? What is lightning at its fundamental core? So lightning is sound. What is sound? Sound is trapping a kind of idea in space for a brief moment, and it creates a big clap, like a resonation. Like that's considered to be like the primordial seed. But it could also be like there's something very transmutational about it, like hermetic. So you could say that it's just lightning. So Mercury really could be, or Quicksilver, which is purified Mercury, obviously. That can also be something that's like inside of you. It's like it's a process of consciousness. So you get the architecture out, external architecture. It's like your spiritual technology. So you're using the shape of the pyramids, you're using the astrological timing, like everything's aligned. You've created this like amazing vehicle to take you to the stars. That's kind of the idea. So say it's Nick. So he climbs to the top of the pyramid, he sits down, he does his thing. I don't know what Nick does. Okay, so it's me. So I have my rosary. I'm doing my meditation. Okay, mantra. Okay, so then I have my magical experience. My consciousness leaves my skull cup, goes off into the ether, then comes back down, but it doesn't come back down the same. I come back maybe with knowledge, like talking about, like when people talk about downloads, like all those modern American kind of prosperity gospel preachers, they always talk about like, yeah, I get downloads, and I'm not disparaging it. I'm just saying that you could consider this to be a vehicle to have or to facilitate magical experience.
That's what we're getting here from Heather Fitzgerald. It sounds like, Jen. Mercury represents a vehicle. So that's an interesting concept, and there is certainly a magical aspect to these sites. So, Rye, you were saying some of them are like pyramids, right? So this is more of a conical mound.
Yeah. So I if you just look, I just put into to share something there. If you want to just quickly jump into,
sure,
change that one over. So
yeah,
that is the pyramid of the sun. Pyramid of the sun.
Okay.
It's not like your pointy pyramids. It's more kind of like it is rounded off, right?
It is conical.
Yeah. And you can see how huge this thing is. I'm going to zoom in here. So,
oh wow,
there's that is, yes. So you got people walking.
No, I see what you're saying in the kind of pyramidal shape of those conical mounds. Then, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very common. Like if you go here on the solstice, this place is packed with people all dressed in white, receiving energy at the top of the pyramid.
Right.
Because that's what they were really doing. That's really what I'm saying, is that they were Mormons. They were proto-Mormons.
Yeah.
All dressed in their white robes. probably with like a fig leaf pattern on it or some shit. And then they go, like the elect go to the, you know, crown of the pyramid. They all stand together in a circle or whatever they do. And yeah, they receive the divine energy on solstices, on equinoxes. This would make total sense, right? And so that's probably,
well, I mean, what you're describing, Jen, is exactly the Mormon theology, because they claim to have gotten it from the Nephites that were natives here in the Americas.
Just trying to find the Pyramid of the Moon here quickly.
So like what you're describing is actually the theology of the Mormons. When you're saying this is like Mormon stuff, I mean, it is Mormon stuff. That's what they claim their heritage to, right? You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily in Mexico. They claim it's throughout all of the Americas, I believe, but nonetheless, it's the same difference.
This is the crazy thing, JJ. This is the really crazy thing that I thought, oh my God, I'm going crazy. But it really all comes from, it really is all Zoroastrian. Like, it maybe not Zoroastrian particularly, but
similar.
There's something similar, or something proto-Zoroastrian, but that Zoroastrian took that form.
Yeah, the sky worship, right? Which would explain the Mormon space opera.
Yes. And it even explains NASA. It explains like how they present the planets. The planets are really the inverse tree. Like everybody, like, you know, some conspiracy people, I'm not saying either of you, I know both of you are cool with the occultist people, but they like to say, oh, like, you know, Cabala is bad or whatever. But the bad part of Cabala, the tree of death, that's what the planets are. Because the planets are the actual physical aggregation, the husk. So it's just interesting to me because it's like it's a way to climb the tree. Like when you're a kid, okay? So you just get introduced to the planets but you're learning Cabala. That's what I think.
Sure. You're saying about the occulted. No, go ahead. Yeah. You're just saying the occulted, there's like an occulted understanding to it then, right?
Yeah, like the things that you learn about the planets, whether they're real or not real, or whether space is real or not real, doesn't matter. Just treat it totally conceptually. The things you are learning, like about the physical nature of the planets, is the inverse of Cabala. Because what are the Sephira? They are negative space, the via negativa. So it's not anything that like what the positive Cabala, you could say, or we'll say good Cabala of the right hand is saying, is that like God created this amazing universe. There's these like kind of stars, you could say, in the sky that you can access through conceptual ideas and colors. But then there's these like NASA guys who are like, we're going to present to you our like edgelord clipolithic Cabala. But it's really like the inverse. It's like, but people can't distinguish between the two. So only if you study them would you know. Anyways, I know that's a little out there.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, Jen. What you're saying is it's kind of like Star Trek: The Next Generation. In many ways, it's superior to the original, but it's never going to be as recognized.
I like that analogy.
So it's a Wayne's World quote.
Oh Jesus! Okay,
that's a good explanation, Jen. No, I think you're onto something there as far as, you know, some of these understandings go, is relative to these sites, especially, right? So, what, and that's far more of the magical stuff. Not within my wheelhouse, but I certainly grasp and tracking with what you're saying. I think from my understanding, you're definitely onto something with what you're describing, because again, the Mormons aren't just a cult that existed in New York or Illinois or Missouri or today in Utah. I mean, they're pretty widespread. And they remain pretty widespread, and they love these sites down there in Mexico for deeper reasons than we understand on the surface.
Of course they do. Of course the Mormons do. It makes total sense. Like I had a series of epiphanies, you could even call them, when we did those shows together with Nick and Heidi. And it was like every episode I was blown away. I was like, wow, I'm actually being able to synthesize so much more information because of you, JJ, because of your like deep knowledge of American history, and Heidi because of her like kind of ins and outs of sort of these Mormon parapolitical layer, which I know also intersects with what you talk about. I was like, whoa, this makes sense. You just have to think of them as magicians. That's how they think of themselves.
That's exactly what they are, right? And I'm sure that's what the folks.
They are.
I'm sure that's what the folks at the Temple of the Sun thought they were too down there still today. Probably they probably still have occultists coming down there today.
Absolutely. So then I was
Definitely.
like,
Yeah.
oh, apologies, Ryan. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Please go, Jay.
No, I just so anyways, that was all. It was crazy that we were speaking to Heidi and I was like, wow, okay, I understand. Like Howard Hughes drawing the blinds. I totally get that. I know exactly what
Yeah.
she's talking about. She's talking about him having magical experiences, his sensitivity to light. This is very common. I've had it, Nick's had it. This is just what happened. So this is something that you would do. And so I knew right away when she said it, and I was like, okay, so this is what the Mormons are really up to. They're trying to train magicians, or they're sucking up to Howard Hughes, who they think is able to receive this angelic knowledge.
He's not their only target. Elon Musk got his own Mormon behind him right there. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
he's absolutely. I mean, look at him, JJ. I like Trump. I know Nick's gonna be like, what? Like, okay, but like, I'm a millennial. I'm allowed to have like some optimism. Is not just cringe, right? We can't be boomers. So okay, so I'm like, let's go, let's fucking go, like 51st state, Templars in control. Like, I think that's a great narrative. So
it's certainly worth trying. I think, right? It's certainly worth trying.
It's better than what is right now. So so then we have Elon standing in his black cap and dressed in all black, doing literal hand signals, and I'm not against it. Like, look, you think the other guys don't have magicians?
It's a very magical world in politics that people don't quite realize. I think
100%.
Yeah.
The tie is we're reading a book from one of my book clubs, and they're talking about the guy Donald Michael Craig. He's talking about how the tie is the modern wand. So you literally project your colors into the world. Like, that's why they do the different colors. It's like so obvious to anyone who kind of gets it. And even a jacket, he even says in the book, your right lapel is the right pillar, and your left lapel is your left pillar. Well, it makes perfect sense. That's the political uniform. They're all magicians. They're all projecting their kind of like penises, I guess, into the world with their wand.
Yep. It's always sex stuff, isn't it, with these folks?
Yeah.
Sex
absolutely.
magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the occultism in American politics goes back to the onset, because again, the Society of Cincinnati folks you mentioned there before, Jen and Ryan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this group, the Society of the Cincinnati.
No, I'm not. But you know what? Just to go back with Jin there, like I've never considered that. I've always stared at the ties. I'm like, what is going on there? Because I find it very captivating. You see these very strong, bold colors, and it's like, why? Why are they wearing this specific one? What's that? Sorry?
You're saying the ties in which Trump wears, the ties in which Elon Musk wears?
Yeah. It's all.
I guess he doesn't really wear ties, but Trump does, I guess.
But Elon projects it with the colors. With his
right.
Weird, his more autistic, quote unquote, behavior.
And then Kid Rock dresses like Evil Knievel in the White House.
Well, that's what they like. So okay, so
or what did they say? A guy being fired out of a cannon.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But it made perfect sense, right? Like, Elon is, but nah, he's Saturn. So you can just think of it like that. Like, Elon normally worships Mars, but if you worship Mars, you have to have a relationship with Saturn. But in sort of the astrological thinking, Mars eclipses Saturn, actually. So Mars has more power over it. So if you are good at Mars, and that's what Elon is naturally good at, that's what he thinks anyway. I don't know.
That's his shtick, right? He's Mr. Mars, right?
Yeah, Mr. Mars. So we'll just say that's his preferred deity or planet. And so he goes to Mars. He's dressed all in black. He has a black skull cap, right? What does that remind you of, right?
Death.
Obviously. Yeah, it's like you could think of it as a kind of like a cork in a bottle. Like the fire has to be contained in the lower or middle tier, like in our stomach almost. Like, that's even where it would be. The fire has to burn enough that we can digest food, but not burn too much that it causes like heartburn. So you want good gut health. So the idea of that would
you're recommending I wear black for better gut health.
Well, okay, so what I'm saying is the black kind of brings it into power. You're kind of bringing the fire like into yourself. You're making it like really small in your mind, and you're like kind of like, I'm gonna bring things into manifestation. You're like magnetizing things to your will. That's how he would think of it.
He does wear a lot of black. He does wear
He
a lot of
does.
Well,
black.
yeah, because that's the magician's favorite color. I wear a lot of black. I only wear black. So the reality is like that's everyone's favorite color because you're bringing things into manifestation. It's not good to stay at any sphere or to stay in any color. But my point about Kid Rock was that he was dressed in that crazy outfit, like you said, JJ. It makes perfect sense. He's Guevara. Trump was wearing a red tie. They're both like into Mars, the two eagles. That's totally martial, like very martial. But that's also part of Jupiter because those two planets are always in a kind of dialectical relationship. That's why Elon has been wearing black because Elon's not good at Jupiter. His it's like his almost his natural antithesis is Jupiter. So you would need someone else to come and embody it. It's like the OTO teaches this. I've heard Nick talk about this, how they use like physical archetypes for Yadhe Vavhe. Like I'm not a ceremonial magician. I've never been one. I've never been in any of that. So I have only
Disclaimer: I've never been a ceremonial magician. Disclaimer.
Well, I'm really not, but I'm just saying that I've heard it from Nick. So there's my source, and I'm giving him credit for it. But I know that they, in the OTO, that they do this. They say, okay, blonde hair, blue eyes. This is your archetype. This is your archetype for tarot. So that's what all they're doing. So Kid Rock is
Okay.
blonde hair. His name's Kid Rock. The rock of Jah is in Hashem. This is like a very Kabbalistic idea. It's in Isaiah 41. I know I'm going on forever. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to take
No,
No,
you're
it's
good.
interesting.
Yeah, you're good, dude. I'm learning about Wizard Bob, aka Kid Rock.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he's a wizard, but he's like a high rank.
He dresses like one.
He knows shit.
Like an evil
He knows,
Knievel
like,
wizard.
Like, I don't know if they're putting them through like some secret Scientology like training camp or
That's exactly
like
what they're doing.
sending them to like Israel or something to work the Sephira, just because they like a Jew is naturally good at Kabbalah because of Hebrew, right? Because it's
They're
very
shipping
much
them down
tied
to Monterey,
language.
Mexico for Nexium MK Ultra, training.
Well, the Nexium thing is really interesting because clearly Nexium was a sex cult, as you've covered, JJ.
Oh, big time.
And and even the Mormons have had these little offshoots, sex cults, obviously, and so have all these other people.
Well,
and, like,
if I can just put a pin in that point real quick here and just close it out here on this mound that I've had on the screen for everybody. No, you're good. You bring up some good points there that I want to get right into. But this, with the occultism and the politics in America, this was George Washington's favorite mound and his secret society that highly venerated these mounds and the contents of these mounds. I suspect they thought, on above the occult aspects of this stuff, they thought they were descendants from the giants inside these mounds, these Adena mounds. Slightly different than the Mississippi mounds, slightly different than the serpent mounds, right? So we got different kind of mound stuff in America. But now I like where you're going there, Jen, because we were talking about the Nexium cult and the Mormons. Well, the Nexium cult, or as I like to call them, the Albany chapter of the Process Church, got a strong argument to make that they evolved into what is known as Nexium because they themselves claim they never closed, and there's photographic evidence to support that. So, but are you familiar with this group Nexium there, Rye? I know they operated in and out of Mexico. They had a lot of power.
I know. I feel so ignorant to this all. I'm like, Nexium? Who the hell is Nexium?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
I'm not.
They're kind of an offshoot of Scientology in a real sense. In a real sense. And so is the Process Church, if you're familiar with them.
I've heard of the Process Church before.
Yeah, another one of these dark, satanic, deeply involved in all things parapolitical kind of cults.
Sorry, JJ,
yes,
sorry, JJ.
Go ahead. What do you got?
I just want to
what do you got for me, Jen?
Quick, really quick, is I want to credit you for opening it was you who I first heard say that. Was that, Process and Scientology are just a black and white umbrella. I think that's even the metaphor like you use. Like one is
for sure
the daytime organization, this is how I would think of it, or one is the nighttime organization. So you're capturing all those people who are attracted to the ideology. So you have the people that are the goody two shoes people, okay, they want Sea Org. Then you have like people like me. I've never been in Process.
Wait a second. You're a Scientologist, Jen?
No, I'm saying that you have people who are attracted to the dark side. So then you're going to capture them with Process. It made perfect. Like when you said that, I was like, click. I just wanted to say that. Sorry, JJ.
No worries. So, I mean, the complexities of these organizations are deep, but so NXIVM was running. Keith Raniere was their leader. They had the numerous members of the Smallville cast in their cult. I would say probably more members than we publicly know about. That is the thing with these groups, especially in Hollywood.
That's interesting.
Are you familiar with that storyline at all? With these cast members of that show being in the cult?
Well, I know about one specific cast member with the tie-in with one of the islands, right? One of the sex trafficking islands.
Yeah, so this was a different sex trafficking operation than that.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's interesting that, you know, she was tied in with that. I forget her name, and then you're saying that they have some other Smallville actors or
Allison Mack
as well.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes, exactly what I was thinking of.
Well, now that you mention it, they did do some island stuff. They hosted numerous NXIVM sex parties at Richard Branson's island, which is just next door to Jeffrey Epstein's old island.
Yes, it is.
Some good, it's a good point you make there. So yeah, same cult. They got busted for doing child sex trafficking stuff. What they seemed to be doing was members of the cult would have children, and then they would take those children and ship them off to a farm in Mexico. And they were very powerful in Mexico. The cult had numerous children of former presidents of Mexico, to include Salinas. Emilio Salinas, I believe is his name. Is that am I making up a name? I could be making up a name right now.
I'll go with
anyhow. He was the president of Mexico during the Magdalena Solis incident. So you want to point some fingers. Well, what's that guy doing? His son's the member of this, high up in the sex cult, right? He seemed to be the leader of the Mexican operations, right? They were running literal MK Ultra experiments on folks out of Monterrey, Mexico, and Albany, New York. But the sex trafficking of the children came into about where these children of the cult members, they would get shipped off. Scientology does it too. In fact, Keith Raniere, the cult leader, his first argument in his arraignment hearing from his attorney was, "You can't charge my client for this. Scientology's been doing this for years." What he's saying by doing this for years is they take the cult members, they have kids. You can't have a kid. Well, first of all, to these people, a child is an old alien stuck in a kid's body. That's a different story altogether. That's how they justify shipping these kids off to go work 27 hours a day. I know there's only 24 hours a day, but Xenu demands 27. So they have these kids in farms in Mexico, and they were using the Mormon fundamentalist cults from Mexico, the LeBaron family and the Romney families, to shipping these kids back and forth from the Mexico. They were transporting the kids back and forth from Mexico to Albany, New York, and other places. And they were the nannies for these children. Those same Mormons got murked in a cartel hit about 12 years ago, if you recall that incident.
Was that in 2009, I believe?
Could have been longer. 2009, that sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. I'm just I think it was 2009. Was it Benjamin LeBaron?
Yeah. Well, I think he had a different incident. So that incident was, I think, 2009. I think around 2012, some of his family members there, the women and children, there was like 7 or 9 of them, got murked in what they called a cartel hit.
I thought that was in 2019. I know in 2019 they had.
Oh, was that more recent? Oh man, you're right. I'm getting my timelines mixed up. You are correct, sir. It's 2019. I was matching them together. So we got the LeBaron war going on with these cartels, right? With the Benjamin. What'd you say? Is Benjamin LeBaron, right?
Yeah, Benjamin. Yeah.
Not the car LeBaron, but the family, the Mormon cult family LeBaron.
Benjamin LeBaron.
So this seems to be an ongoing war, and it all seems to be surrounding these cults and drug trafficking, right? Like I said, that NXIVM didn't get popped with any drug trafficking. Might have believed they weren't drug trafficking. No, I don't believe that for a second. They do. This dude was ordering, Raniere's ordering hits on folks. This is a very powerful organization, very powerful, right? Yeah. Far and above what the media sold it as, including not just Mexico. Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein's buddy, his first cousin and her daughter were members of this cult.
Go figure.
Yeah, I think her name's Catherine Oxenberg. She's some sort of
princess
royalties. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I couldn't think of the word. I don't like those terms, Jen. I know you're Canadian, but
no, I'm French Canadian. Actually, we have a long history of resistance.
It's even worse.
I know, right now it is, but I'm not from Quebec, so it's okay.
Yeah, where are you in Jin then?
I live on the East Coast now, but I'm originally from Toronto.
Oh, okay.
But I've
Okay.
lived all over. I've lived in different places. I've lived in the U.S. I've lived in abroad. So, but yes, I am truly Canadian. I'm like JJ knows. I'm like I'm like an old stock. No,
Hey, man, I'm backing up. I'm born in Edmonton and lived in Calgary,
awesome.
so there we go.
Oh,
There you
nice.
go,
I didn't
like,
know you were
true
Canadian too. We
blood.
got a couple Canucks in the
We
house.
got a
I didn't
couple
realize
Canucks
that.
in the house. Exactly.
You went from Canada to Mexico? Did you stay in America at all in between, or how'd that work out for you?
I leapfrogged that. I leapfrogged the states.
Oh, shoot.
America's
Nice.
awesome. I honestly think
Yeah.
that, yeah, we're half of Borea, so eventually Mexico and Canada will be, in my opinion, part of the.
We'll be part of CUM,
I don't know. Well, we're
Canada,
whatever the
US,
plan
Mexico.
is.
You know the acronyms. Come.
Well, whatever.
Am I the only one
whatever-
laughing at that? Am I the only one laughing at that? I'm
No,
like, okay,
No.
come on.
No, I was thinking you're from Mormonville, Canada. You're from Calgary. You're from Calgary in
Oh, yeah,
Alberta,
there's a
right?
lot in
That's
there.
Yeah.
that's all.
Well,
Lethbridge is the Salt Lake City of Canada.
Yeah. That's a little south of Calgary. I've
Little
only
bit.
ever been to
Little
Lethbridge
bit.
a couple of times, but yeah, not
Interesting.
missing much in there.
I didn't
I spent
know
a lot of
that
time in
about
Lethbridge. A lot of time.
you
I used to
have?
go drink there all the time because I was stationed in Montana. I joined the Air Force at 17, and I got a lot of underage drinkings in my first couple of years. I had to I'd take it down a notch. So I started legally drinking in Canada on my days off. So I had to go to Lethbridge, and Calgary's a nice town. That's everything up to Edmonton. Sometimes that far, but yeah, that's all Mormon country. The Mormons are heavily populated to that region still.
Do you know they have underground tunnels, right? In
Where?
Lethbridge. Did you know that, JJ?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, all over.
Al
over.
Capone. Al Capone did.
Yeah.
I thought that was for getting bootleg alcohol into the U.S.
Okay.
If
Well,
I
that's what they
recall, if
say.
that is correct, or is that in Saskatchewan? I
No,
might be mixing.
no, that's
That sounds about
totally
right. It's near the border, right? So I mean, you're going to be.
Yeah, they had them all over. They're all over Alberta and all over Saskatchewan as well. Like, and you will see them in like Chinese mining towns, perfect for opium trading. It makes total sense. And I also want to point out, Heather had a great comment. Mars is about power. So Elon is just taking that power wearing black as the kind of father figure. He's like taking control of that flame. He's like, this is mine. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail that. I just wanted to point out that she said that and I saw it.
No, you're good.
Interesting. Yeah, that's and you're saying like Alberta is the Mormon capital. Like there's one
It's
small
Brigham Young
city.
approved. It's Brigham Young
Yeah.
approved.
There's one small city that I just thought of was called Morinville, not Mormonville, but Morinville, and I was like,
Okay.
I wonder if that has a tie-in with the Mormons. They have a church there, but it doesn't mean anything else.
JJ, this is the truth about Canada, even Western Canada, even though I'm like a technically Eastern Canadian, is that if there was a Mormon when I was like a kid, I wouldn't have ever known. I would never have known. I mean, it just would have been totally oblivious.
I can spot him from a mile away.
The white shirts, black bow tie, and the black backpack with the little name tag.
Yeah, I was about to say the name tag. They tell you right there, brother
Yeah.
or sister. Now, I grew up Mormon for 20 years. I was Mormon, so I had some heavy Mormon stuff in my life. I can spot them from a distance.
There we go. I grew up with the Jehovah Witness in my front yard. The Kingdom Hall was my neighbor.
Oh.
That was the literal Kingdom Hall was right in my front yard.
Similar ancient alien cargo cultists as the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're into the hood rat shit the Mormons are into, but this was that 2019 incident with the LeBaron family, and it was these women and children, and the teenage girls that happened to be victimized just happened to be nannies for the NXIVM cult. And Raniere was, they're all getting hemmed up at that time, right? He's already on trial at that point.
Jeez.
Pointing
makes
out
sense.
correctly chronologically in my head now. I'm like, yeah, 2019 makes a lot more sense. But yeah, they took over. So when Brigham Young hit up Salt Lake in circa 1847, they immediately went north and immediately went south. So they immediately set up there in, Canadaville, Mormonville, Canada, and then Mormonville, Mexico, where the LeBarons are still today, and the Romneys, right? And the Romneys.
Man, I got to do a deeper dive on the Mormons.
Yeah,
have
they're
JJ
everywhere.
on. Have JJ on to come talk about the Mormons.
Yeah.
There we go.
Throw Howdy in the mix too. You'll get a full scope of Mormon
Yeah.
stuff going on. She's got a deep understanding of Mormon history and theology as well, from some slightly different angles than myself. Although I did graduate their seminary, so I mean they got me fully indoctrinated.
Wow.
I was also a Boy Scout, and I used to go to Boy Scout camp and Boy Scout functions and stuff with my troop through the church there, and all these other Boy Scouts I'd meet at these camps and functions. They'd be like, "Why do you call your Scoutmaster brother?" I'm like, "What? Why is the grass
Why don't
green,
you?
fella?
Yeah,
why is the
exactly.
grass green, fella? What's going on? What's going on in life? I don't know. Why do you?" Because that just because he's my scout leader, you just call him brother because that's what you call him normally within the church, right? It just goes on,
Okay,
Did the same thing in basketball too. The Mormon Basketball Association call the coach brother because you don't call him coach. I mean, it's brother, whatever his name is, right?
Well, that is funny that like so many modern magicians use the title frater. Because
Exactly.
that is like very Mormon then.
It's the same thing, right? It's just Latin
exactly
for brother, right?
Yes, exactly the same thing. That's why it's funny. It's kind of weird. And there's like a lot of like Mormon fake porn. Like it's not fake porn, but it's like Mormon themed porn. It's very strange. I've seen this on Twitter. I don't know anything about it otherwise. Yeah.
I don't want to know about it necessarily, but what?
Yeah, it's very weird. One of my friends who also has a podcast, he sometimes posts about it. That's how I learned about it. But yeah, it's real. And anyways, no, not anyways, but I apologize that not apologize. Solar, who is also my friend, he brought up a really good point. Are Canadian Mormons linked up with oil gas exploration? I would say probably yes. I would say that there's probably like an identity. It might not be a Mormon identity, but maybe there's like a Canadian heritage identity that you see a lot online right now. People talking about this, like what is a heritage Canadian? And like who is the true Canadians? I think this has a lot to do with that. I think it's a lot more to do with like Mormons or love bloodlines. I think that's what this is about.
Well, it's a good question. That's a good question. I'm not sure. It is a good question because the Mormons are very powerful out west. I'm coming to a greater understanding of that myself and studying the Idaho 4 case and things like that. And things like one of these process church characters, these spooky characters that are involved in the JFK situation, who was named Kerry Thornley. And every one of he's also founded the Discordian religion society or whatever, which I would argue is an offshoot, a chaos cult offshoot of a chaos cult, the process church. They would argue a different origin story, but the process or the Discordian Bible was first printed off in New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison's office by some process related figure. So to say that they're not related.
Sense.
Yeah, to say they're not related, I'm not willing to believe that. And again, Kerry Thornley is a big time spook character in a lot of these process activities over the years subsequent to the JFK assassination, which got him on Jim Garrison's radar as Oswald's double. He was running around New Orleans pretending to be Oswald, and they knew each other from the Marines, strangely enough, But this Thornley character just happens to be literally from every branch of his family tree, descended from pioneering Mormon families. So deep Mormon roots, deep.
What do you think? Sorry, JJ.
No, I was just saying they probably have a stranglehold amongst oil business and stuff over the years because I mean they were out west before everybody else was, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in the north end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you know what? I was just looking into this. That definitely the Mormons are involved in the oil and gas, especially in Alberta.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Go. Individual contributions. And Eldon Tanner, a prominent LDS church member, played a significant role in Canada's oil and gas sector. He was a president of an oil company in the early 1954. This company merged with another to form Trans-Canada Pipelines. Get out. That's why I moved to Mexico, was because of Trans-Canada Pipelines. Wow. Okay.
And there's a Mormon behind the Howard Hughes enterprise that took over Howard Hughes his disappearance. Right. And there's a Mormon behind Elon Musk, right? So they do some shadowy stuff. These brothers, as you put it, they're these freighters, right, Jen? These magicians.
Well, that's what they are. They're clearly a faction. There's clearly multiple factions. This is from you, JJ. I'm not taking it as my own, but it's something I've adopted as my own now because it's true. Like Mitt Romney is not the same faction as some like base MAGA like Mormon. There is a difference. Now, okay, so
Sure.
I know, but like again, like I am choosing clear pill, very Scientology. I'm choosing the clear pill. So I'm just gonna look at things and just say, like, yeah, we're in a game, like not in a simulation game, but like we're watching two factions or multiple factions play it out plus ultra. So like, let's have fun with it. Let's just like say like, yeah, fuck yeah. Let's like, let's fucking go. That's it.
Well, Jen, I don't do drugs, so I don't know pills from replays. But so some of the other things you cover there on the Codega's Codex of Curiosities there, Rye, you cover cryptids, right?
Yep. Yeah, we definitely. I just dropped an episode, kind of like a rehash episode of one of my best friends, his incident with a dogman in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, dog! I like Dogman stuff. We can definitely get into some Dogman stuff here. So, what's going on before we get into that? Before we get into the Dogmans of Youngstown, Ohio, are you familiar with this cryptid?
Look at that face, man! Look at that face.
His name's Mittens Romney. His father was born in one of those Mexican Mormon cults we were just talking about, and he's wielded an unsurmountable amount of power in this country for a number of years, largely funded by George Soros, despite claiming to be a Republican.
Okay, so
what do you think he spends on that haircut? $400, $500? What are we talking here?
It's better than Trump's, though.
Look at that 8 head on this guy. What is this? What's going on in those Mormon cults? They don't produce these inbreeding. May have gone south for them.
Okay, so I heard, did George Soros resign from the WF?
I think you're talking Klaus Schwab, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah, Klaus Schwab.
Soros resigned from his organization, though his son took over, and he's now married to Anthony Weiner. Anthony's going to tweet his dick to a bunch of teenage girls. Weiner, Huma Abedin, is now married to Soros' son. Weird, right?
Extremely weird.
The daughter of Muslim Brotherhood leaders, right? Nazis from the Middle East, if you will.
Well, speaking of Nazis from the Middle East, like that's what I meant. Like Romney is like clearly, I don't even like the word neocon because it can even apply to like so many different things and so many different ideologies, especially now, everybody uses like those kinds of words, Zionist, neocon. What does that even mean? So I'm just saying, but I do think he is kind of a neocon, and so he does represent like a faction of people who are generally want war, generally want destruction, generally are not America first, or not like don't care about
for sure
people. So that's what I meant by factions. Not that necessarily there is a grand good versus evil, but it's always kind of a mixed bag.
No, you're right, and this is a strange cryptid. If you see him run, it's not nothing good's coming from that one. You encounter that one in the wild, beware. So what's going on with the Dogman in Youngstown, Ohio? I'm not near Youngstown, however, I am in Ohio.
All right, you want me to give you the Coles Notes, a brief rundown of this event? All right, so this is back in the 80s. My buddy, when he was about 14 years old, him and his friends would go down to these old abandoned steel mills. Okay, and that time they went down there and they would have a bonfire in one of these old abandoned steel mills. But they're out there, and then they could hear this noise of all these dogs, and so they go outside and they look, and there's a pack of wild dogs, which was not uncommon in that area, and they're running, and they're on a beeline for something, and they go over this hill of they call it coke, which is like this ash or like this leftover. I think it's the material that they use for smelting. I'm not 100% sure. So they go over this hill. I'm not a
smelter either, so I believe you.
Sure, we'll just go with it.
We'll go with smelting.
Yeah. So they go over this hill and they hear the dogs getting into a fight. And at first they thought they're fighting each other, but the sound was these dogs getting the shit kicked out of them. And then they saw one dog come flying over this hill with half of its skin hanging off. Okay. And they're just standing there like, holy crap, what is going on?
Yeah, I bet.
Another dog comes running and gets thrown as well. And all of a sudden the dogs just take off and they leave. And they're like, what was that then on top of this hill comes this huge beast. They said it was about the size of a polar bear. It was this huge dog wolf-like beast that came up there, and they said it was male because it did its business. It just let loose a big stream, and it was just sitting there, and it was fixated on these dogs that ran away. So my friend and his buddies are all standing there, and one of the guy is losing his shit, and he steps backwards, and there's these big metal plates. Of course, he hits into the metal plate, knocks it down onto the concrete. You know, you're not going to miss that sound. It was just like boom, 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 and this wolf or this werewolf changes his gaze and sees them. Okay. And it could have at this time, at one point, it did stand up on its hind feet. I don't know when exactly, but they all ran into the building, and then they started running up the stairs. They don't know where to go, so they started running up these stairs. The stairs are partially deteriorated. They're broken away, so they make it up to the second level. And he says the group kind of split up at that time, and the other. No. Yeah, so they all and not at that time. There were still 4 of them up there. Then they're waiting. They're trying to be as quiet as possible. Then this beast comes into this warehouse or this old smelting or this old iron factory, and it goes near where this fire was. And they said that when its paw was near there, the paw was like phasing in and out of reality. Okay, so it was kind of like phasing in and out. And he says it was crazy. It was like a brief second. And the shadow of this beast is cast onto the wall by the fire. And they said it was just massive. At this point, they said, this is when they said it stood up. It stood up by one of these pillars. And this pillar was like 11 feet tall. And it was just shy of this height of this pillar. They said they could also hear this water running sound. And they looked, and they finally realized that it was this beast. It was drooling so much. These big, huge drool was coming out of its mouth that it sounded like water splashing onto the ground. And
I was going to ask you if anyone pissed themselves during this, because that'd have been my thought. Who's pissing themselves at this beast?
So he never mentioned that, but I'm positive that would have happened. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. They said, okay. And I'm butchering the story. When it was outside, it let out a howl, like an infrasound howl, and one of them did piss themselves. They said it caused them to like it was almost like a mini heart attack in their chest, like this compression in the chest when it howled at them. So they're up on this first level, and this beast smells, looks up at them, and starts to make his way up there. The other 2 guys run up to the roof, not to the roof, but to the next level. And my buddy and his friend are staying there, and this beast is coming, and it starts climbing up these stairs, leaps over the broken stairs without a problem at all. And it's just about to come around the corner. And that is when a train comes by. There is a train I don't want to say driving by. There's a train going by. And they said for as long as they've been there, a train has never blew its horn. This time it blew its horn. And this beast looked out at the train, looked back at them, looked back out at the train, and took off running. They said as it started to run out of this building, it started to turn into like this smoky apparition. It kind of started phasing out of this reality. And they waited there for about, I think it was about a half an hour before they're like, listen, we got to get back. We need to get out of here. And the one guy's like, no, this is the same guy that knocked over the metal thing. He's like, no, I'm not going. They're like, listen, we're going whether you like it or not. If you want to stay here, by all means, you can stay here, but see you later. Right. And so they were, and this was a couple kilometers or a couple miles to get back to get back to their houses. So they start going, and there's this gravel pit, right? And they're trying to climb out of this gravel pit to get near to this highway. And they said, like, as they're going, they're like losing their grip, like the rocks are kind of pushing down. So as they're trying to climb up, they're kind of sliding back down as well. And they are freaking out. And they eventually make it back home. And You know, like Matt was saying, like he grabbed the water hose. He was drinking from the water hose, and he's just started vomiting as well. Just started throwing up, and they ended up talking to. They each went. This is like maybe after a couple of weeks, they each went and talked to the parents, each of the parents, and none of the parents believed them. None of them, except for one. His dad wasn't the mayor, but he was high up within the municipal government. And he eventually, the dad was like, you never go back there again. The dad eventually admitted that there was something down there and you never go back down there again.
Weird.
Extremely.
And this is an abandoned smelting site or something?
An abandoned smelting site. Yep.
So the city just had it kind of cordoned off then at that point?
Pretty much. Yeah. It's if I have this, I might actually have a picture of this site here if I can, if you want to give me
that'd be great. I'd certainly be curious to know the geography of it, because if it's anything like the southern gravel pits and smelting kind of sites and industrial areas, those are often built in flood zones. Those flood zones are generally mound sites, whether or not they're intentionally building on these mounds or not.
Well, this was lower. This was lower, but here it is here. I don't know if you can.
Sure.
So
do you know the precise? Did you have an address for this site or a name?
I don't. It is now completely gone. It is now completely destroyed. This is where they were standing, and they were looking over at this direction, over this way, where they saw this creature. And this is the train yard where the train came through, and they said they're in here. And then they ran back into the building. They had the fire going on in this building. They ran up to the first floor, the first mezzanine, and there was a second floor as well. He said there was two floors. And he says there was a fire escape out back, but it was all rusted. And they, if you go up back, there was nothing. Like, even though there was at one time a fire escape, it was gone.
Sure.
So this was where this incident took place in Youngstown, Ohio. And for those who I see a bunch of people saying, I've heard this before. This guy's name is Matt Emch. And yeah, I actually just re-released this episode yesterday on my show. So I kind of re-edited it a bit and re-released it. So this is this one. It's crazy. Now, he had a dream recently, and I don't know how you guys feel about dreams, but he had a dream recently where this beast came back to him in the dream, and he has his leg amputated now, and it grabbed his leg and kind of like threw it off, and then it went up to him and it went like face to face and said, you need to quit talking about me.
Yikes.
And if you don't, I'll be back.
That sounds like more of Jen's department, but if I may comment real quick on this picture here, this is this picture from my experience, this picture encapsulates the city of Youngstown, Ohio perfectly. Their greatest export is crippling depression. Go ahead, Jim.
That's awesome.
Well, I don't know. I might disappoint you, JJ, but thank you. I just believe that I'm calling it the dog god because it's like, that's what I've been planning to say like all night, is like the dog god. I think it's like serious. I think it's a metaphor. I don't think it's like necessarily real. I think it is real.
No, this is an archetype, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying it's like it's a conceptual idea. It's like a metaphysical idea. The dog god leads us to knowledge. That's kind of like an idea at least. So I think it makes sense. I think he leads you through the carnal ground. That's how I would describe it. He's like a ferocious god because everything around you is ferocious. So to lead you through, to guide you through the carnal ground, what that really is, which is just conceptual reality, you have to also be like, you have to confront your fear. So for me, it's just a metaphor, but I like it also in the supernatural layer. I believe in the supernatural layer, and I definitely believe in dreams. And I think that that's a perfect medium for that idea to like manifest itself. But I don't necessarily, I'm not like a very theistic kind of person. So
where do you stand on ultra terrestrials? Whether or not they involve portals or not, that remains to be seen. But the ideas of John Keel, if you will, the ultra terrestrial type activities. he had a lot of ideas, I think, surrounding these mound sites too, which, you know,
And
I don't know
was
where I
actually,
stand on any of these subjects necessarily. I definitely don't believe in necessarily a physical being, but you know, some sort of. It's definitely folks are seeing something at these places, right?
yeah, exactly. And I know you had that previous picture up of the Beast of Bray Road.
Yeah, I don't know what I did with that. I'm looking for it.
No problem, no problem. I literally was just talking to.
I
Who
had it here
says literally
somewhere.
all the time? I was just talking to the guy who owns the property where this is said to live on.
Oh,
So Lee Hempel
nice.
is his name, and I just was talking to him yesterday. Had him on. I just interviewed him, but that interview will be out in May. Really interesting. Tons and tons of photographic evidence. He has pictures of it, but he doesn't want to release the pictures yet. He's a little apprehensive. He's released a lot of other pictures, and he has three eyewitness accounts of this creature as well.
That's interesting. That's interesting because when you were describing the other Dogman tale of Youngstown, it reminded me. I mean, a lot of it just shares a lot of the hallmarks of the tales of the numerous incidents and sightings of the Beast of Bray Road or that area, right? So it's called the Beast of Bray Road because there's a large concentration of sightings in that area. But the first sighting,
and that was coined by Linda Gottfried, the Beast of Bray Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Linda Gottfried mapped out all these sightings, and they just happen to coincide with mound sites.
Jeez, of course.
She's passed now, so I never got a chance to talk to her about these things once I discovered that. But she does have a whole map she made where she's produced that.
And I'll say this: the next best person is Lee. You know, he was working hand in hand with Linda there because it's his property that's right at where they said that this was all taking place. Yeah.
I'd certainly like to pick that man's brain or talk to him in an interview, find out what he knows about these mounds up there and these dogman sightings. Because the first one, if you're familiar with the first sighting,
nope, please.
The modern incarnation, at least, right? So that was 1936, I believe it was, and 1936 on a mound site outside this Catholic facility, St. Coletta's mental institution in Jefferson, Wisconsin. Jefferson, for the namesake of Thomas Jefferson. A lot of these mound sites are all named after these folks, the founding fathers and the Society of Cincinnati members. Washington, Lafayette, Jefferson, these kind of things. So you'll see a lot places with mounds are oftentimes named. This street will be named Washington or Fayette Street or Gallatin Street or you name it, Dayton Street or one of these prominent members of the society. This sits in Jefferson County. The Catholics decided they come over here too and start setting up shop on mounds. They did a lot of that stuff in around these mound sites in Wisconsin, specifically Ohio, kind of through the Midwest to Wisconsin and Minnesota for that matter. But this one here in Wisconsin, St. Coletta, Jefferson County, just north of Bray Road area, about 30 minutes. 1936, the night guard was doing a round, and there's a mound that sits right over here in the kind of the bottom part of this picture here. I couldn't find a better picture of it. But this is the site where it occurred, and he's doing his rounds and sees this dogman thing on a mound, and then sees it again the subsequent night. Apparently, this was all written about in Linda Godfrey's Beast of Bray Road book, I believe. It's right where I first learned about it. But it's an interesting site. Again, it's a mound site, and it's where the first dogman sighting, modern day at least, there in 1936. It's where Rosemary Kennedy got lobotomized. That's where they shipped her,
Wow.
John F. Kennedy and RFK's sister. They shipped her to that mental institution for whatever reason to lobotomize her. It's an interesting spot.
Okay, sorry, JJ. I'm going to jump in really quick here.
Come on down.
Is that there is a kind of French, you could say there's a French Canadian kind of strain in this, or like maybe a French Jesuit strain in this, because Wisconsin was settled by obviously Eau Claire. Any French?
I think that is Jesuit. You're mentioning that.
Yeah, because parts of Michigan and like the UP, like if you go there, people will have French Canadian sounding last names. So, but they don't speak French. They don't have like any kind of like French identity. They just have these names. So you're familiar with this kind of phenomena because there's also in Massachusetts and some parts in Maine, there are like this kind of communities that they don't really speak French, but they have this kind of like French Canadian maybe ancestry.
Don't you know?
Makes sense, right? Exactly. So they would have like some maybe quirks of language, obviously. But no, but
Right.
about Wisconsin, but there is something interesting about the mound sites, and you were saying about the founding fathers. Well, if you think of like Nick even said like way earlier on, like the council or like something about 13. Well, there are 13 stars on the flag if we're saying that the mound sites are pointing to or representative of themselves, of vehicles to get to certain star places on the star map, but we're talking about conceptual. We're not talking about like flying saucer shit. We're just talking about strictly like magic in your mind. So they're projecting the founders into the stars. Basically, that's how I would understand it metaphysically. They're kind of solidifying them into the ether. We will understand them as being in the stars. Like you and I might not understand. Like I don't know the constellations for the serpent mounds. Like I don't know any of that. But if I maybe just the idea
Oh,
that
well,
the,
what you're
sorry,
saying
JJ,
makes a
go
lot
on.
of no. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. If I can just give you a quick example there, Jen. So when you're talking about this whole pathway to the stars stuff, it sounds a lot like the ancient Egyptian kind of Book of the Dead kind of theology type stuff, right? And on this map right here, and speaking of the founding fathers, on this map right here, it's not a good map, but you can see this. Couldn't find my better map, but you can see this little circle right here. This is downtown Cincinnati in 1815. All the mounds that sit there. A lot of this activity right here, that's Fountain Square. That's the center of the city today. This portion up here, this little oblong circle here, is actually there was 3 mounds right there, and they sat in this park right here called Washington Park, named after George Washington, right? And in fact, they would later make this a burial site. They would put 54 Revolutionary soldiers in this place there as soon as they set up shop in Cincinnati. So,
Nine. Do you notice it's always so there's like numbers for the state rituals, and then there are secret numbers for the secret societies. Sorry, JJ, I didn't mean to jump
no,
in. I
you're
just
good. I mean,
wanted to point
I
that
don't
out.
even, no, you're good. I don't ever look at stuff like that. So you're bringing, I'm like, yeah, I guess that is 9, right?
Yeah, it's the 5 and the 4 together, just like we were talking about before, like the Mars and the Jupiter. Those are the numbers for those spheres or those planets would be the 5 and the 4. So when they're talking about the 54, they're talking about 9. 9 is what? The moon. So it's the resolution of the fire and the water, very blue and red, right? And you're bringing it into resolution in the white, the pristine sort of expansive space, what can also be represented as a star. Exactly. That's exactly what you're doing. That's what. So they're just talking about metaphysics, really, in my
For sure.
opinion. So a
No, I
lot
see
of
what you're
what it
saying. And with
is, yeah.
Washington, those 3 mounds that were sitting there in Washington, what is known as Washington Park, which is a a sacred burial site for Washington and his fellow officers for 54 of their troops. That site had 3 mounds on it, and it sat in elliptical fashion that looked like the Great Pyramids of Giza in alignment. So, and when you compare it to what it would with the stars, it looks like it would line up with the Orion's Belt, the same way as the Pyramids of Giza do here. So, these 3 conical mounds that sit in Washington Park, there in what is now Cincinnati, we're doing the same stuff metaphysically as you're describing, Jen, is what these things are doing here.
And that's
Yeah.
The pyramids of Teotihuacan. They are exactly lined up exactly the same as well.
Interesting. Does
Yeah,
speak to a
because
global
they're
understanding of these concepts.
yes, absolutely. It's an axial. I believe it's an axial system. Some call it perennial. I think perennialism is flawed because perennialism means that it always is kind of there's a static element to it. I think axial is a lot more interesting because you can say it's dynamic, just like Mormonism. It's like Martinism. It's like a little bit of that like Dutch Cabala shit that they were doing in Pennsylvania. I'm not saying it in a bad way. Obviously, I really like Cabala. I think it's a great system. So I'm not disparaging it, but I'm just saying that's what they were doing. And then it's also like a lot of Catholicism. They have a lot of like the angelology, all the they've taken a lot of like Native Medicine Society shit. They have all like they definitely have some Navajos like definitely on board with the Mormons. And so I just think that basically you have this is the American religion is magic. I think this is my theory is that the real American religion will be like a kind of magical Christianity.
Yeah,
That's
folk
kind of my
magic, right?
theory. Yeah, like a mixture. It's going to be a
Yeah.
mixture of all these things. And that's why I also think they fund the cults. think that's a big reason why they fund, like the Bronfmans, why they fund Nexium.
Ooh,
They
the
want to
Bronfmans.
test out.
I like
Yeah,
them.
because they want to test, and they're a huge branch family in Canada, and really interesting, right? Montreal.
Yeah, I just scheduled
Toronto.
a show earlier today to talk the Bronfmans in a few weeks here on Fridays. So it's certainly it's an interesting topic. It's a family that branches Canada and American parapolitics from Nexium to P. Diddy to the Epstein situation. They do it all in one family, right?
That's the thing, is that they're like trying to test out these things because they've forgotten. Like the idea is that they are like some like lineage from like Carthage or Babylon or whatever. And I'm sure in some like Mormon
Or
fashion.
Mothman.
I'm not picking on the Mormons. I'm just saying the lineage in the terms of genealogy. They probably have one or two ancestors that are some like fucking Babylonian. Okay, who cares? You live in 2025. You have like your knowledge is as degraded as everyone else. So this is why they fund the cults. This would make complete sense. It would be like almost like they've lost things, so they're looking for them. So they're basically like the CIA, giving out the grimoires, giving out the knowledge, seeing what people make of it, not necessarily doing it themselves, but the CIA is the biggest publisher of occult material. I mean, let's be honest. You can even go on CIA archive and look up like all these left-hand path texts, like tons of them, and as well as medieval grimoires. So like, why is that? It's the same. It's a tale as old as Owen Davies said, since the 1100s. That's right.
They're all wizards, Jen.
It's a battle of the narrative. It's a battle to who controls like what is the acceptable daytime religion.
Sure. And psyops are magic, so I mean, these things go
absolutely.
Spookcraft is magic, right?
He was a good magician. You can say whatever you want about Aquino, and I'm sure he was a really dirty guy, really like horrible. I'm not saying anything good about him, but I'm gonna say he was good at Cabala and he was good at magic, and that's just the reality. And like, because I've read a lot of his works now, like I actually have like an understanding of like where he was going. I don't agree with him. I'm just saying that it's real.
So no, that's a good point, Jen. So Rye, do you cover any besides? I'm excited to hear this more about this Dogman interviews you got going on with the Wisconsin landowner there. Do you dive further into any other cryptids like one of my favorites from my home state there of West Virginia, West by God, Virginia, in fact, the Mothman?
Of course I do. Yeah, I've become actually good friends with an actual
with
witness.
The Mothman.
Nah, unfortunately, no. With
dude, you know everybody. You know the Dogman guy. You know the Mothman guy too. You're in deep with these cryptids. Okay,
an eyewitness of the Mothman, and so I became good friends with Linda Sigmund, who witnessed Mothman herself.
Nice.
It was they went out. Her and her boyfriend, they went out and. They're laying on the hood of the car, just relaxing, and then they saw this light coming out, and then they started freaking out. And then this creature came out of the light, landed on the ground, kind of thing. They could see its wings and everything with red glowing eyes, and they jumped in the car and they took off. Racing, and this creature flew with them this whole time, and they were flying down the road, and she said she was hanging out the window trying to get a better look at this, and then they ended up like parking in this parking lot. They kind of thought they got away, but then they said this light orb came down the road, like it was driving down the road. They thought it was a vehicle approaching them, and it came up to them, and it kind of like scanned them is what she felt. She felt it scanned them is what it did. And so that was...
You're talking the OG eyewitness.
I'm talking OG here. Eyewitness, yes. Yeah. She had a dream of the fabled presence in the water, seeing all the gifts in the water as well. So, and she also saw a man in black as well in downtown as well when she was out shopping after the fact.
Now, these men in black in the Mothman scenarios, these are not your Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones men in black, are they?
No, these are more like the alien-looking S. She says that they look out of place. They don't look natural. They don't move. natural. They move very sometimes they move very uniform. Like, I'm not saying this one that she saw, but I'm saying a lot of other times they see these moving uniformly. Sometimes it's one in one. Sometimes it's one that looks more human, and another one that just doesn't look right. Always wearing the glasses.
Yeah, if I remember correctly from years ago, I haven't read John Keel's stuff in years, but if I recall correctly, the man who was investigating this stuff contemporaneously to the events, he quoted the local newspaper editor there as saying these folks oftentimes looked Oriental to a certain degree, and they also dressed like they were from a different era and drove vehicles from a different era.
That's interesting. Yeah, I did not hear that. But really fascinating. And I talked to some, so I talked to her, but also talked to Bill and Jackie Kuselis. They wrote the book called Bridging the Tragedy. And what they were doing is they spent years researching Mothman sightings and UFO activities and the Men in Black that kind of led up to the disaster. But they were working more on like the lasting psychological impact to those who survived as well. So that was an interesting interview as well. That they talk about these people who have been, it affects you. Like when people are like, people doubt these encounters, but when you talk to these eyewitnesses, that they have seen something. It is so life-changing that either it's a PTSD kind of incident or something that they end up like changing their whole life trajectory.
Yeah, you were kind of saying that with the Youngstown Dogman situation. It was attacking dude in his dreams too, right? There's some sort of dream state effect to these environments. Is it like an entanglement that happens in these incidents, like some sort of quantum entangled with each other?
I extremely believe so. I've heard a theory, and I kind of go with this theory that some of these creatures, not all of them, some of them are interdimensional, and when they pass into their dimension and then they come back into ours, years might have passed, years and years, but for them, it could have been seconds. So maybe that this creature, looks identical for, maybe it could have been a year for it. And this is like, 12, 15 years later that he runs into this or sees this in his dream again.
Yeah, that's kind of the ideas of what John Keel was saying in his ultra-terrestrial kind of concepts, which I really like those ideas.
So let me jump in here really quick, JJ. Is that I want to
knock it out, Jen. Knock it out.
I just want to shout out that Nick invited me on to interview Toby Chappell from the Temple of Set, and it was a phenomenal, amazing, one of the best shows. I've done really cool shows with Nick and you, obviously, many times, but a really interesting show. And then also we interviewed the guy about the Montauk Project. So, and he talks a lot about like how the Mothman, and it was very profound because I was like, yeah, butterflies. Like Nick asked me specifically, he's like, Jin, what do you think butterflies mean in like your esoteric like understanding? Because Nick kind of understands, like even when I'm like off in the Sephira, he kind of gets it. People who get it, I guess. But and I answered, and he's like, yeah, I totally get that. He's like, the feeling, the fluttering, and I was like, yeah. So it's kind of like a magician symbol is really what it turned out to be from the episode. So I just want to shout out that that's really where I first thought about what Mothman could be, was in that like kind of dialogue.
You bring up some interesting points there, Jen, because this depiction here we're seeing in the statue and the name Mothman are really incarnations of a local media fellow across the river in Ohio in Gallipolis. Is that how the story goes? Is your understanding in there, Rye? Your eyewitness didn't exactly describe necessarily a creature like this, but
no, they did describe some sort of wings, but when it flew, it didn't flap the wings. It went straight up and go. Right. And these wings aren't like flapping like a bird. You would see that. It was just kind of like appendages almost in a way, but just not moving at all.
Yeah, and it didn't necessarily have a humanoid body. It had a funky body from my understandings of but not necessarily. It had legs, but not necessarily humanoid as is depicted here. Again, Batman was very popular at the time, the TV show of that era. So the local media was like, oh, we'll call him Mothman, and they kind of became more, anthropomorphized. But it was definitely some sort of more of a creature than it was a human. I feel like from descriptions.
I do too. I do too. You know, and this is another thing that I got to say. Like these glowing eyes is something that you hear quite often with these cryptids. This incandescent kind of glow. It's not like it's a flashlight, but the eyes are always glowing. And I'm not sure if I told you I had an experience myself of like a shadow being with glowing red eyes as well. So these glowing red eyes. And not red, not necessarily just red. You're going to see like yellow and other colors, but
like fire, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's not like
okay.
It's not like you're shooting out eyes, but like the red that I saw was as deep as the red as you see in Mothman's eyes in this picture here. If you want to zoom in on that, if you can, I don't know.
Yeah, I can do that. I see what you're saying though. It's more of a fiery effect then, huh?
Something like that. Yeah.
Maybe I can zoom in on it.
There we go.
Come on, machine.
Oh, there we go. Almost. Yeah. Oh,
we're getting there. There we go. Mothman eyes.
Yeah. So the Mothman was claimed to have glowing red eyes. I've talked with another person as well who's seen a shadow person very similar to what I saw with glowing red eyes as well. And let me tell you, it is completely unsettling. It is something that, you know, it's not right. It will affect you for your life. Hence why I'm doing what I'm doing. One of the reasons.
Interesting. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were so deep into Mothman. As again, I'm West Virginian legend right there. It's some West Virginian folklore.
I dabble in everything. It's kind of it's Mothman, Bigfoot. It's just everything. You know, if we circle back to like these. If we're circling back to the mounds, you know, I don't want to say necessarily Bigfoot,
yes, sir.
not Bigfoot, but giants, you know.
Sure. If I may close out the Mothman thing with the mounds and circle back to the mounds for you.
Yeah.
The second Mothman sighting occurred in November of '66, and it happened on the Mason County golf course. And I can confirm, in fact, that is a golf course built on mounds. Like a lot of golf courses are built on mounds because it's the natural topography. They just use the mounds into the golf course.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is confirmed. So this is a confirmed mound site. That's the second sighting of the mound. And I think the first sighting is interesting because, like I was saying with that smelting operation in Youngstown, these sites, these industrial sites are often built on mound sites simply as a result, if not for greater occult purposes, simply as a result of the fact that those locations are floodplains and, you know, mounds were in floodplains. And they build industrial stuff in the flood zones of cities.
Very strange that they do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more to it. You know, I mean, on its face, you got that
cheap
right?
land.
So,
yeah,
right, there you go. Right?
I actually no. You're near the river, of course. Sorry, I should think logically. You're near the river, easier for shipping. So
a lot of purposes behind it, but there's probably still some occult purposes, I think.
Yeah.
So what were you saying about the mounds and the giants then, huh? Is that going Nephilim? Is that what's going on here?
Of course. Yeah, there's been numerous accounts of giants being found within the mounds. When they're excavating these mounds, like there was back in the late 1800s when they were promoting people to, you know, take the mounds out. Like they're telling the settlers and to destroy these mounds. And the settlers were not even just the settlers. I mean, like settlers is too far back. But when they were doing that, they were discovering these large bones, and that's when the Smithsonian was created. Came out, collect them. See you later. And now I was just talking with Freddie Silva, and Freddie was taken, and I'm not taking mounds, but pyramids. He was taken into a pyramid here in the Yucatan and the Yucatan Peninsula. He never disclosed the site, but he kind of gave me a general area. He's like, I can't really tell you, but it's near this area. And he was showing the burial site within the pyramid of a 8-foot red-haired giant. So
nice.
It really fascinating. Yeah. So these giants, these Nephilim are you know, every culture. Every ancient culture talks about giants, and you know we believe them for other things, but on the other side we just disregard it. Like it's like, oh yeah, they're talking about giants. That's just metaphoric. That's just an allegory.
Fake stuff.
Just fake stuff. We'll get rid of that. But everything else
that's very intentional, though, don't you think? Because like you were saying, there's no shortage of accounts of discoveries of these giant human skeletons inside these mounds.
Yeah.
right? Including official discoveries by the Smithsonian, right? So it seems like our
Yes.
understanding of it today is seemingly very intentionally,
Yeah, and
concealed,
you'll go
right?
into, you'll find all like 1800 news clippings where they show these giants and then they just disappear. They all disappear. So it's very very unique as to why why are they trying to do that? Well, of course they want to cover their tracks, because then that would lead us on the trail back to the Nephilim, which will lead us back to the trail of the Watchers, which will lead us back to the trail of, like, the fallen 33rd and 33% on Mount Hermon, which is on the 33rd parallel as well. And again, we're falling into the 33rd parallel again, which is really interesting.
No, I mean these mound sites are important to a lot of folks. Like I was saying, with that location there with the Dogman in Wisconsin, that Jesuit site. Jesuits built a lot of spots on mound sites and their entrance into America. The Society of Cincinnati, the folks that started America, George Washington and his troops, and their modern day descendants and the bloodlines from those original troops, they venerated this guy, Cincinnatus. Steve Bannon goes around today calling Donald Trump Cincinnatus. I mean, Donald Trump's a member of the society as a result of being president, but they go around calling him Cincinnatus. Well, I think Cincinnatus here, this is a giant statue of him in Cincinnati at the landing site where they started the city, the society that is. And I think that not only is it, a giant statue, I think this is actually built to what they thought his actual size was. I think they thought Cincinnatus was a giant. He lived circa 500 BC in the Roman Republic. Well, these Adena mounds date back to circa 500 BC, the ones where we're talking about these giants inside of.
Can I just point out that the literalist interpretation that Rai was referring to is actually the most recent one, and it also corresponds to something JJ was talking about, which is the Jesuits, who had a scientific materialist approach to the Bible, which was extremely literalist. So the metaphorical approach is actually the esoteric or / occult approach, meaning that yes, it can be a metaphor, or it can be real. It can be neither of those things, or it can be both. So that's important to take into account, but the literalist interpretation is most likely wrong. So take that for what it's worth, but that's generally how it works in magic.
Fair enough. I appreciate the insight there, Jen.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think there's I have the general concept of weird shit happens in and around these mound sites. This was an infiltration of weird cryptids in January of 1959 of Octoman. There was numerous Octomen. I was going to ask you what if there was an occult. I was going to ask Jen too as well if you guys understood this picture as anything else, but this was a description of the being that was numerous beings that invaded Cincinnati, technically near Richmond, Ohio, just upriver from Cincinnati. In January of 1959, there was newspaper article reports, all sorts of police dispatches. There was, there was 4 or 5 of these creatures, to my understanding, up and down river.
I never heard about this. This is interesting.
In Richmond, much like Cincinnati, is another. These are all built on mounds. These cities are right there on the river. But yeah, whatever this creature was, I mean, we believe there's octopus men now, or is this some sort of demon creature? Right? Like, what's going on here?
It's Koronazon, if you want me to borrow a term from both Enochian magic and chaos magic. It's Koronazon, just as I think the Mothman also is, actually. I think that is definitely, like Todd is saying, it's Cthulhu. It's like it's the dog star, it's the dog god. It's like, but it's not a dog.
Are you serious?
Like, right, exactly. Are you serious? Like that's what that kind of manifestation would be. It would be something very ferocious, test your fear, maybe show you really crazy shit, like people talk about, like whatever. But it's just conceptual, right? It's not like you're not supposed to go and do it. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. It's like that's a test of consciousness. Like, are you the hero? Can you like persevere past this like ferocious guardian? Like, what really is he? What does he really mean? So for me, that's what it is. But I know I'm at like I'm a Buddhist, but obviously I do come from a chaos magic perspective. So I do always consider things very conceptual. So I understand that. But for me, that's what it is. But I do agree that things can be real. Like those things like that we see, Like, I'm not saying they're not even physical. I can agree that they are, sure, certainly part of it is definitely physical, especially like the flaming giants. Like this reminds me, maybe not giants, but like flaming beings, like nature spirits can appear that way with like flaming hair. Like, to go back to something Rye said, the flaming eyes of the Mothman. Well, fire is the element that watches. It's also the transfixion. We call it in Sanskrit, it'd be Vashikaran. It would be like the thing that you look at that you can't look away. And it would appear, as Rai said, in the multiple colors, like the splendors of the flower. That's even another way to sort of describe what you're talking about, like the qualities of flame. So, and it's like kind of transfixes us, mesmerizes us, kind of tells us to come forward, even though we know, like, this is something Nick said. And I was like, shit, that was really deep. Not that Nick isn't, but I was just like, it was rather profound later on. And I was like, he was like, yeah, what is the heatless flame, but being far away enough to perceive what it is and know it, what it is, but being far enough away that you can't feel the heat. So it is heatless. But when you're close, of course, there's going to be heat. So that's directly from Nick. I'm not lifting it. But yeah, I was like, yeah, that's completely makes sense. Like, the closer you go to your own fear, like the intensity will increase. So I think even that's true about like what people are perceiving that they're seeing. I'm not saying that's not real. I'm just like, I think it manifests according to like the consciousness of the person. I really think it's interconnected. It's like psychic phenomena and like cryptids. This makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, I like where your head's at there for sure. There's something
It's
that connects all
interesting.
these things.
I agree. I do believe it's all connected. All connected.
So, gentlemen, I appreciate both of y'all's time tonight. Can we, I guess we can wrap things up here, get started that way. Can I offer you any closing thoughts to you there, Rye? I appreciate you joining us here.
I say thank you for asking me. It's been fantastic, and Jin is full of insights. Really added a lot to this.
As always, always got some interesting perspectives there, Jen. I appreciate your time as well, sir. Rye, can you got any plugs for folks here or anything? I mean, I'm definitely checking out some Dogman stuff here on your Dogman conversations.
It's just a yucca flux of everything, you know. If you're into Dogman, I got Dogman. If you're into Bigfoot, got Bigfoot. If you're into conspiracies, we got those. Even some flat Earth, if you want that as well. And I seem to be focusing a lot is like ancient history, biblical ancient history as well, like with the Nephilim. And I'm going to be going into David and his mighty men here very soon as well.
Nice. That sounds like some interesting topics for folks to check out.
Yeah. And I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'll definitely be checking some of those out myself. Now, and I'm not sure I'll be on the next Occult Rejects with you, but sounds like you got some interesting topics teed up for that next Occult Rejects conversation.
Heck yeah. About time, what is it? Time slips, time travel, a little bit of all of that.
There you go.
Just a teaser.
Nice. And Jen, sir, I appreciate you joining us as well. There, good sir. What you got any closing thoughts on the evening's conversation? Any sort of plugs you're working on?
Well, I will plug myself, but I want to say thank you, first of all, to Rye for tolerating. I'm sure you had no idea who I was or what you were going to get. JJ's used to it, so I can go even a little harder than I do on Nick's show, just simply because I know JJ will. He'll allow me conceptually, like, the space to like kind of go there. But yeah, he reins me in, so it's like we have a good working relationship like that. So and then obviously thank you to JJ. Amazing, really honored to be your co-host for the evening. And obviously I'm not taking Nick's seat permanently, but I'm sure we'll work on rejects together. I have an episode with Drizzle from Grand Theft Radio out on my show. It's called Alternative Frequencies. I was supposed to drop last week. I know, I'm sorry, a little slow. And then I have a Grey Lodge space tomorrow on X, which we're calling Saturday Night Gnostic Mass. Usually we call it Friday Night Gnostic Mass. And so we treat it as like a speculative series where we talk about magic, and we're a book club. So we're reading Donald Michael Craig. I know this is from Todd. I lifted it from him. Modern Magic. And so he's covering like all of these kind of like mixture of ceremonial, new age. It's kind of like a compressed OTO, you could say, like in one book. So we're kind of reading that. And yeah, so thank you both. Obviously, shout out to Reject, shout out to Nick, shout out to Ashley from Union of Unknowns, and everyone who like in Kane B, I don't know who that is, but like you sound cool. And like all the people in the chat, like really appreciate it. Thaddeus, Vanessa, like all the people that I see in my, like come, and obviously Todd, who's been on my show. And yeah, so thank you guys. Appreciate it. Amazing. Thank you for letting me be weird.
No, for sure. I always appreciate your insight and like your style there, Jen. And yeah, I enjoyed the folks in the chat as well. I saw Nick in there. Kane B is the host of The Purge. I've been doing a lot of purging over there, talking Idaho 4 murders. So folks can check out more of those conversations on Operation GCD, deep dive into the parapolitics and criminality surrounding this Idaho 4 murders case. And if I can put on some closing thoughts from tonight's conversation again, I appreciate both your gentlemen's time and discussion this evening. And the watch out to you folks and to the folks of the interwebs. Watch out for cryptids. Some of them look like this guy, the octopus man. Some of them, they come in all shapes and sizes. Some look like this scary creature. So you really got to be careful out there, folks. You got to watch out. Operation GCD Live, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Times, Wednesday nights. That's more of a question, I guess. But Wednesday nights and Friday nights again, Fridays. And again, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. And Jen will be joining me for doing a couple occult and or esoteric reviews here coming up in the coming weeks.
Oh, fuck
various,
yeah.
Various 1980s comedy films that taught me everything I know about satanic cults. This week's is Dragnet. And in a few weeks coming up with Jen and Nick from the host of the Occult Rejects, y'all are joining me for, and I was about to say Big Trouble Little China. We already did that. The Golden Child. It's a classic.
There's some great ties with the Golden Child and Big Trouble in Little China. I don't know if you know that.
There are some great ties. They were actually made at the same time. I believe they were competing film studio projects.
Yeah, and they actually shared actors.
Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty wild. So you're obviously a big fan of both those cinematic masterpieces as well. I like your style, right? But no, we're
Big Trouble Little China, man. I grew up with that. I don't know how many times I've watched that. Yeah.
Well, I recommend to you and any folks at the interwebs check out the show Jen, myself, and Nick did regarding the occult and or esoteric review of Big Trouble Little China.
I want to say it was fucking good. It was a really good show.
Well, slightly biased, but yeah, it was a good show. No, it's Golden Child should be another good one. I thoroughly enjoy that. Basically, Eddie Murphy plays his Beverly Hills Cop, Detroit detective Axel Foley character, but fighting a satanic cult run by a demon and doing all sorts of other stuff in like Eastern mysticism stuff in Tibet. It's pretty wild.
Fantastic.
So, anyway, well, appreciate your time there, gents, folks, the interwebs, and we'll call it in right there then.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, well, check your six. Look in that garbage can, because you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.